All right, we're going to have Chris ICONICIDE, then Rhonda, and then we'll have our feature, Jane LaCroix, and then we're going to take a watermelon break. So,
John.
Oh, he walked away without his cake.
All right, welcome, Chris, and he's been kind enough to videotape today for us, so thank you, Chris, for doing that.
Yeah, I'm Chris from ICONICIDE. My band's been around for 35 years. Also, if you want to check out my latest book, Notes from the Exploding Library, it's online for $17.76. If you got $10, I'll flip you one. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the autobiographical portion called An Exploded Life. Another epiphany, equally as important, was the blackout of 1977. Where were you when the lights went out? Was the question of subsequent decade. Residents of Bushwick at the time would never tire of sharing their tales, of being caught out there, of the chaos that ensued, the looting, the mayhem, the fires, the desperate, shrieking violence of a city finally awake, cut off from its steady flow of distraction and self-deception. It was a Wednesday night, or at least that's how I remember it, because that's when I bathed. Saturday night baths were fine for other people. I had just closed the door and undressed, drawing a deep, hot tub full of water I knew would inexorably turn gray, as another week's layer of protective dirt was sloughed off like a discarded carapace. If I was lucky, no one would notice the difference. My socks would still develop the same holes over the big toe, ready for me to flip them over the other way, so the holes would be underneath my pinky toe instead, until all my socks had two holes each. Lifting my leg over the threshold, I lowered it, toes pointed towards the steaming bath, which I preferred hot enough so I could envision myself going totally numb. At the precise instant my big toe touched the water, the lights went out. In that fateful split second, I believed wholeheartedly that I had done it. I froze, waiting for the powers that be to realize I didn't mean to. Take it back, I thought. Turn the lights back on. It didn't work. Of course I got in and finished my bath. I would probably be punished for turning off the lights, but it was bath night, and I had my priorities. Who knew when I would ever be able to bathe again? Was this the end? When I dressed, opened the bathroom door, and stepped out of the kitchen, the hush that had descended was palpable. We're here. We're all here. Of course we're here. There was never any hope of escape. The Leparis. Let's check with the Leparis. After a few dizzying moments, it was indeed established that it's not just us. Anthony and Angela confirmed it. The rest of the night, many people, those not out there dropping their own disguises, hunkered down and waited for the world to come back. I waited for it to end. Sadly, it didn't. That wasn't my epiphany, though. That came with the aftermath. Back then, we were never allowed to venture far, but still, there was the subway. The Myrtle Wyckoff Avenue stop was serviced at street level by a structure which, like my birthplace, does not exist anymore, resembling one of those damned Quonset huts old Stiffy King liked to write about, nestling underneath the elevated tracks, one side stone, the other an incongruously vast rooftop, sloping down to chest level from 2 stories high, painted some forgotten color, now bluish gray. I've searched for quite some time for photographs of the structure, yet had found none. It was always a surreal experience entering and exiting that station, like I'd crossed a threshold into another frontier. When I was a teenager, Peter Edson invited me after school to hang out and play a pocket worth of video games at the larger of 2 arcades located in Penn Station, this one at the center. We settled on a marathon group session of Gauntlet with a slightly older kid who would only identify himself as the warrior. I always play the warrior, while Pete played the elf. He still does that. I arrived past 8:30 to find my father waiting on the other side of the turnstile, glaring and furiously chewing gum, his gun belt already in hand. I don't remember that particular beating more or less than any of the countless others. I only remember that defensive posture I always affected, the one that resulted in him, number one, beating my spine out of shape and knocking my right shoulder blade out crooked. At times, I wonder if my childhood hernia came about naturally. On summer weekday afternoons, I would sometimes ride the M train one stop to Knickerbocker Avenue. However, as often as not, I would overshoot this station and ride as far as Manhattan to Essex Street and then ride back to Bushwick. Perhaps at those times, as much as I dared, I entertained visions of escape. However doomed, however short-lived, I always returned home. When the blackout hit, this journey took on a magical cast, and years of repeated exposure drummed deep the aforementioned epiphany. For when everything went black in Bushwick and all hell broke loose, acres of densely populated slum were burned to the ground until from horizon to horizon nothing remained but what I would later refer to in my comic book Sick World as rolling hills of rubble, which may be a building here and there standing like a burned matchstick or decayed tooth. At sundown, the sky and land were set ablaze as far as the eye could see. The devastation was awe-inspiring. To me, it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The city lay naked and proud, hidden no more. Every time it rendered me speechless. Speeding through that unabashed hellscape, I did my best to drink it in at cellular level, to preserve those moments within me. This is how the world looked when it ended, and I wished with every fiber of my being that people would just let it end. Let it all end. As much as it warmed my heart, the knowledge that everything could die after all, I knew with creeping, sucking dread that it would not be allowed a natural death, and that the mindless cockroach race of humanity would infest it again. Whether it be years or decades into a future that had no right to exist, I knew what was built would be more convoluted and pointless, and far more stupid. Everything since then has proven me right. Apologies if I ran over. Notes from the Exploring Library got copies for $10 each if you're interested.